Welcome folks, we are Sophie and Philippe, two professional chefs and experienced regenerative farmers. After years of running our own restaurants and organic farm, we are now setting up our latest farm project in Portugal, Philippe's homeland. Alright guys, it's a beautiful day today. I'm very excited to finally announce the launch, slightly delayed, just a few days, of our very first ever e-course. It's called Setting Yourself Up for Successful Vegetable Growing. And in order for you guys to understand why we made this course in particular, I would like to take you all back to when we began and walk you through our own adventure. So let's go.
Okay, Sophie, can you tell me about the first time that you decided that you wanted to grow?
Yes, I can. It is a long time ago. And actually the first time I decided to start growing was before we actually made the decision to go and do it. Because I already planted a few things in the garden of my mom's house where I grew up when I was younger. And I felt very, capable. Oh my God, I'm growing my own lettuce. But I was like 16 or something around that time, and that was just a very brief stint in the world of growing. But it got more serious when Philippe and I had our first restaurant. This was in Holland, in Den Oever. Shout out to Den Oever, great little village. If you're in Holland and you want to visit a nice place, just go there and walk on the Afsluitdijk. So what happened there was we had a little restaurant there, and it was a really great time, but we unfortunately had to deal with a lot of inconsistency in the quality of the products that we were cooking with, because we used to just order everything from the wholesaler, let's say, and we would just, especially in the fresh products, have a lot of fluctuation, let's say, of the quality of those products. So that was the first time we really started thinking about, it matters where your food actually comes from, and like it has a big effect on the taste of your final result. And we also had a very indoorsy life, because we used to work, 24/7 almost, I'd like to say, in the kitchen under the neon light. And Philippe and I are actually quite outdoorsy people, in the sense, not for hiking and stuff, but we like to be outside and we like to have our hands in the dirt. So we had to come up with some solution to that problem, that we were basically feeling like there was something missing there. And that's when we decided to start a farm-to-table project, meaning we could combine, the cooking part with the outdoorsy part. So we thought, okay, if we start a farm-to-table, then we have two flies in one swat, let's say. So two birds with one stone. So that's when we decided that we were going to start growing, really.
Well, that sounds like that sounds good, like a great plan.
Yeah.
And so where did you go? Like, you started this farm-to-table restaurant and you had a little farm. Tell me about it. Where was that? What was the setup? What did you do?
So we moved to Italy for that, and we started farming on 7 hectares and a little bit, and they used to farm grain there, so it was like a very big, clean slate, if you will. Like, there was not a lot of things happening on that piece of land. And we had a wonderful terrace overlooking the garden, and we set it up there so that we would be growing most of our own ingredients. So we did pigs, and we did chickens, vegetables, herbs, planted quite a lot of trees there as well, which we had to wait for a few years, because obviously tree systems are not that fast. Eggs, oil, so yeah, we did almost everything except for all the grains and stuff, and it was a very ambitious project. So we started off with 0 experience, and we just dove right in and threw ourselves in there, thinking this is gonna be a breeze, gonna be super easy.
So how did that go? Was that super easy? How was this first year for you?
As you would expect, very, not great from the get-go. The growing part, the cooking part, of course, we knew how to do that, but we were very ambitious and naive when it came to the whole farming and growing part. And the funny thing is that the biggest thing was definitely the vegetables. Like, the garden itself was the hardest thing. So we had a lot of animals, and we started off way too big. We started everything together, almost simultaneously. That was mistake number 1, probably. But yeah, the vegetable growing was the one that proved hardest and took us the longest to really get a handle on. So yeah, that was a rough ride, I would say, that first year.
What was like the main things that you struggled with? Like, could you tell me like 1 or 2 things that was like really throwing you off there?
Let's talk about all those fails. Yes, no, I'm happy to share, and no shame here. Fertility was the biggest issue from the get-go, and the size and time management. So the size of the garden and the time it took us to manage that garden. So we had a lot of failed crops. We had a lot of things going into flower prematurely. We had a lot of really rough and physically hard times getting things, from the garden onto the plate, literally. It's like a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, so a lot of physical labor. And looking back at it now, it makes me laugh because it was just all really wasted time and energy, because it didn't have to be like that. And the reason it didn't have to be like that is because if we would have known a few things more beforehand, we could have saved ourselves a lot of time.
So you're now in Portugal, like a lot of years later, like I think 8 years later, I guess. Yes. And you started a new project, and I'm assuming you maybe did some things different this time. Like how was the start of this project compared to like your last one? What did you learn here?
Well, definitely a world of difference. A breeze, I would call this one compared to the first one. So yeah, I think in our last project, around year 2, we started getting it and figuring it out, and we did that. I want to sort of explain here that it wasn't that we started with zero, we started with zero experience, but we didn't start with zero knowledge. We did do a lot of research, and we obviously had the internet already back then, so we were avid YouTubers and looking up information. We, bought some books and talked a lot to local people as well. But the thing that was really quite clear from the get-go is that we didn't have the framework, the right framework to operate from. So what that meant was that we spent a lot of time in our first setup having to make day-to-day decisions that we then made, because you need to, you can only move forward making decisions, but a lot of those decisions ended up backfiring. Yeah. So in year 3, when we really got it and we just changed our whole setup around, and we realized like, oh God, we don't need to be out there weeding 24/7. It doesn't need to be this hard, and actually this system can thrive on much less acreage. In the end, we had like 5,000 square meters of garden, which is very large to hold under management, but it was so much easier than the 2,000 we did in the beginning. So just to give you an idea of how productive you can actually get once you're doing it right. Now that we're here and this second project, it's been a world of difference. It's just been much more easy because we started off with a clear mindset on how we were going to go about it, what our objective was. We had a clear sense of which resources were on this land. We did our research before we started planting anything. We did everything step by step. So definitely a better setup altogether. And it's actually funny because that's the reason that I made this course that I'm introducing in this episode, because it is exactly this course that would help anybody to set themselves up successfully from the get-go. And that's why this place has been so easy compared to the last one, because we knew what we were getting ourselves into first off, but we also had that mindset and that framework to work from, in which we then could make these decisions on this unique location much easier than we would have if we didn't have that framework. So yeah, it's been a world of difference, and it's been much easier, I guess, that's for sure. Oh wow, my daughter is bringing a little cauliflower. Show us this abundant crop here. Let's give an example of this bountiful, beautiful crops. Lunch. The great thing about growing is that it doesn't need to be that difficult. It's actually quite simple. Everybody can grow. Everybody can grow great and abundant crops and have an amazing vegetable garden. And I think that the setting yourself up in a way where you're going to achieve that success almost instantly, it's going to save you just so much energy and time. And that's why I made this course, because I thought, well, if I could have spared myself that initial year and a half of time, money and frustration, then I would have loved to have that out there. And I think it's quite simple. And unfortunately, there is a lot of knowledge out there, but a lot of it is quite contradictory. And a lot of the things that are out there are advices on how to do this in the successful 3 steps, blah, 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 blah. And it's an oversimplification. It's when you understand some foundational knowledge about plant growth and about what drives fertility and about, best practice in design, for instance, in your garden. If you get those things, in your mind, and you understand how that works, everything's a breeze from there. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you can get yourself some big cauliflowers.
Very simple.
I'm very proud of this. It's my baby. I've spent a lot of time on it, and I really thought long and hard on how to present it in order for you to really understand what it takes in order to successfully grow, and what are the most relevant and important topics to wrap your head around, so that then you can make all those thousands of small decisions on your own, because you've got that foundational knowledge there. So it starts off with plant growth and soil basics. Then we move on to fertility. Then the third course is setting your goals and limitations. Then you go into best practice and design. So how to set up, your ideal setup in your unique location. Then we go into seed and crop choice, and we finish it off with a small module on pest and organic pest control. Because, we have a very interesting and maybe slightly unique way of dealing with that, which is much less invasive than most people would think. So, that you can either purchase those modules individually or the course as a whole. And I highly recommend that you save yourself the time and money and just go there and go out there and buy it. I wish that I would have had this course, and I know it would have served me. So I really hope that it resonates with beginning growers. And I wish you guys all the luck.